And you all helped.
No, I just got a soft chair.
No, you didn't do that. The city gave some money to the project.
Yes, I did. I was over there, I promise.
They put you to work if you wanted to.
I'd do it.
We would like to welcome you to our work meeting. It is June 5th. And just one announcement as we get started, and you will all be getting an announcement for this, but if you just want to put it in your calendar, this is the legislative dinner that they have down at Weaver County Fair. You've probably gone to before, where it's the state dinner. They said they'll be sending you all out an announcement for it, but I thought if you just wanted to put the date down in your calendar now, so you'll already have it. So it's going to be Friday, August 8th. It's in the building that was just directly west, what does it tell you, in the auction arena, and then, so that starts at 6:30, and then the bullfights are at 8 o'clock. So you will be getting an invitation for this from Stacy Skeen, and then she wants you to RSVP for that.
Okay, and the dinner's at what time again?
6:30.
Okay.
Dinner's at 6:30, bullfights are at 8 o'clock.
Hopefully it doesn't
So
rain.
like I said, you'll be getting a separate
It always
invitation.
rains for a second.
Yeah.
Bullfights or bull riding?
Bullfights.
So it's
They're
the,
good. too.
really?
These guys are
They actually
pretty
use the
good.
capes and all of that stuff?
They use their body, and
Kind of like a clown, like a.
once in a while they'll have a
rodeo.
prop of some kind.
They'll like hurdle them. They'll like do a flip over them. It's insane.
Yeah,
They're
they run
crazy.
and do these
They are
themselves.
crazy.
This little tiny circle ring.
Jeez.
It's not like you can run very far.
No. Well, you can climb the fence, I guess.
So a little report on WACOG meeting. So we had, it was from the YCC that came, and I think we have donated to this in the past, but I don't remember if this was in our budget for next year, but I think we have donated, haven't we, to the YCC, but they came and did a presentation, but I don't remember seeing that in our budget. But does that sound familiar to you? But I think it's good, but they actually went through and gave us this list of how many calls that we actually have from Hooper and how many cases, and so,
Or the youth children's
Oh,
center?
yeah.
no, it is the YCC, it is the,
We
what
got
does
an
that stand
email.
for? It's the, well,
Corrections.
Our community connection, it's
Yeah,
actually the
sure,
women's
sure.
shelter.
The women's
Yes.
shelter.
Oh, it is?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, this is RCC?
YCC.
The YCC.
Yeah.
Oh.
Your
Yeah.
community connection.
But I know we did put, but anyway, maybe this is something we can talk to Tammy about, because they came and did a little presentation.
How much are they?
They didn't really ask, they didn't give a specific amount, they just really said, well, they showed how much, like Ogden City, but then they're a big city, but it did show, and we don't have a ton of cases, but it does show, Hooper, for example, had 8 calls that were victims, and then as far as sexual assault, we didn't have any, but, so.
So when a woman is in a domestic violence situation and feels it's dangerous, they can go to the Y and they'll actually house them until the case is resolved. And they'll also help them get a protective order. It's a great operation.
Yeah, well, I think we have in the past, but I just don't remember what it was. So we'll have to, ask that, and maybe there's some in that community education fund or something anyway, if there was on that. And then just another real quick little update. So they had the Region 1 director there from UDOT, and actually the one that is over the Region 1 planning manager. So he said that they are going to be, and I think we've already talked about this, but they're going to be beginning from 193 to 1800 will begin this year, should be done in 2 years. And then they really feel like shortly after that, it'll probably go from 1800 to 5500. They said to 4,000, they are pretty much set on the route. And I think, Debbie and I, we talked about that along 5100. But from 4,000 on, because of wetlands, it was going to go out, and about at where Rawson Ranch is, it was going to go down. And Ryan Halverson said they're pretty certain they are not going to allow them to go through those wetlands. So, but they pretty much have the route to 4,000. But he said, yeah, he's thinking probably
Have they started the environmental study yet?
they're just trying that this year. And
So
that'll
right
take 2
around
years.
1,500, 1,500?
Coming fast.
Yeah, it's coming
Is there
fast.
enough, someone called me
4,000
wondering about
miles.
5100. What's the time frame on that? My understanding was they were doing the stop and go light first, and then the street. Or do you have an update?
Oh, 5500.
51 and 4,000.
Oh, yes, 4,000.
Yeah.
Yes, I think they're gonna do that when they work on the 5100, because we actually have to have turning lanes. So they said when they were doing that, because we'll have to have the
So-
responsibility of,
Is that coming this summer? Okay,
yeah,
that's what I
they're
thought.
gonna
That's what I
start.
told them. That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that should be coming soon. So he did tell us that it is going to be a 250 foot is the distance they need for it, and he said, we need to call it SR 177, we don't call it Legacy, Davis Highway, it's SR 177, it's lots of different names, and it will be 2 lanes on each side with separated lanes.
Now, did they talk about, are they using 51, the actual 51 is the frontage road
51
still?
that they talked would be a frontage road, and
And
that's
then
what they don't know if it's going to be east or
Or west?
If it
Because
goes,
of the cement canal, they're gonna have
That'd be
to.
5 lanes.
if it goes east, it'd run into the school if they went past 4,000, wouldn't it?
And they'd take out the church if they go
Well,
west.
it kind of made it sound like maybe west till they get past where the
Because of the
cement
cement
canal.
canal, they're gonna
Until they what?
Till they pass the cement canal, and then it would go east, because they've already purchased all that land.
Right.
It's gonna be like.
But he said he will let us know. Like they said, when this gets further on in the study, they would come and meet with us, and because I told them that's really what we need. How do we plan if we don't know?
Right.
You know.
And another good thing would be to inform the citizens as soon as possible when we have ideas. Because like I found out that they were even thinking of 5100 initially back in the 90s when I read it in the newspaper.
Yeah.
In fact, it was front page news. And all of us on 51 were like, what is this? We've never even heard of this.
Yeah.
So I
it
think that would be good.
Yeah, he said that they did the original alignment study 2006 to 2009, but then lots of different, he showed the map.
Yeah.
And he said, really, because someone specifically said, okay, have you pretty much have, and he said 5100. He said it really hasn't varied from 5100 now. But anyway, that's the thing, they just need to let us know. Just, as we said, just keep us as informed as you possibly can. So that was the only other thing, I just had a really nice to see.
So we call it SR 177.
SR 177, he said that's what it is. He said, it gets called a lot of other, I've been calling it West Weaver Corridor, because I figured if it's Davis Corridor, it's,
I've been calling it
Weaver
Legacy
Corridor.
since they first named it that back in the 90s. So.
Okay, let's see, I think Reed had a couple of
Couple of issues. One, of course, is involving Brandon, and some of you may have heard that Brandon was selected to be the Domestic Relations Commissioner, which is in essence a judge that handles he handles a variety of things: domestic violence, protective orders. Most of the divorces will go through him, and separations. He does the mental health hearings for people who have been committed to mental health mandatory treatment. And he may do some criminal arraignments and criminal preliminary hearings. But at any rate, what that is a state position, and he can't do anything else.
Well, congratulations.
So, yeah, it's
to
kind of a
him.
cool
That's
deal.
neat.
In fact, that's a real cool deal. There
Yeah.
were probably 50 people that applied, and
Well,
he ended up getting it. So
congratulations,
that was great.
Dad.
That's awesome.
So, but at any rate, he won't be doing any work here. So that presents a couple of issues. The most immediate one is he was doing all of the criminal work for the city. So you probably don't even know about that. But every time there's a ticket written or some type of criminal activity investigated by the police, that all goes through your city prosecution. And that is something that is ongoing in many, many, many cases. Trials set, hearings set, sentencing set. So that's not the kind of thing that I do anymore. I did that in my younger years, but not anymore. So we reached out to the county attorney. A lot of the deputy county attorneys do that type of work in cities all around the county, and asked if they had a suggestion. Chris Allred's a pretty good friend. He's the county attorney. So we asked him if he's got any suggestions as to somebody to do the work out here. His suggestion was Brandon Miles, and Brandon apparently lives in Hooper. I didn't realize that.
Across the street right here.
Is it a fairly new house or
Oh,
something?
yeah.
Brandon.
Okay. But at any rate, he was excited about the opportunity, and so my thought is that you just hire him under me, although I wouldn't really tell him anything. He does it better than I do. And if we ever change my position, then you can find out if you can find somebody who wants to do both. But I think you'd be very happy with Brandon, and I think he'd be willing to start right up and would be an easy transition if you're all okay with that.
And that's okay,
And
that
then-
he lives in the city, it doesn't. there's
Well,
no-
it creates some problems when you know some of the people, but probably not too
Okay.
much.
Well, it
He's
works
so
out.
new that he might not.
I was just
He has
wondering
been
if you
there
tell
that
him my
long,
stuff.
that he
Right.
might- I don't know that
Well,
he-
I mean, that happens all the time with attorneys or
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah,
But
if he'd been to school here and lived here with all the folks, it might have been harder, but I don't think that's true.
yeah, well, it works great because the name's the same.
Yes, you got Brandon again.
So
So
we
that
can
works
just say
good.
Brandon, and we don't have to change names.
And as to myself, I'm happy to stay on for a while and let's get things through some of these challenges we've got right now. But long term, I'm at the point that I'm not wanting to do it all. So sometime in the next few months, we'll want to look around. But let's get through some of the things like the stuff you have on tonight, and then we'll see where that goes. If that's all right with all of you.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Along that juncture, one of the cases that Brandon's been handling is the Runchester, or whatever the people's name is, the guy that wants to split his lots into Renovister. Renovister.
Yeah.
And that is actual litigation, so the choices are, we can switch that over to the insurance, and they've got several of the cases already, so I'm reluctant to send them another one, but or if you want to consider again just letting him have his 2 lots, I don't know that that's a bad choice, frankly. He's already got 2 houses, doesn't he? Didn't he build
I think he just remodeled it.
He remodeled a
Did he?
home.
Yeah,
No.
he didn't build a house. I
So
think
I-
he was-
Applied for an AED.
he applied for an ADU, but didn't.
Oh, he didn't actually build the
No,
AD?
I don't
Okay.
think so.
So anyway, that's a thought. If you want to settle it, we can settle it. If not, we better send it to the insurance and let them pick it up. I think there are arguments both ways. It certainly is a hassle. The thing he wants to do immediately is depose 3 of you. So you're going to spend the day in depositions, and I think that's these 3. I'm not sure what he wants. I don't know why he wouldn't want the other 2 of you, since you all made the decisions, but those are the 3s.
They
Oh,
voted
did you
for
vote the other way?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So my suggestion would be, I know it's against the grain of your feelings, but just settle it and get rid of it. But
It just feels like, people, if they don't like a decision, then they throw a tantrum and get what they want. And it just feels so wrong because it feels almost like it sets a precedence for, well, you can do this if you don't get the answer that you want, because we made the decision on very solid ground, and it was not made lightly, and we had good reason because of the zoning, and
The zoning didn't have anything to do with it.
Uh-huh.
The zoning allowed it.
the zoning didn't allow
The
it.
land use map allowed it.
I don't believe the land use map did allow it.
It did.
Wasn't it 1 acre lot?
Yeah, it was 1
It
acre
is now,
lots.
but at the time it wasn't. It was before we did the general plan.
Oh, during the general plan.
It was before we approved the current general plan. So the land use was half acre.
Because when I voted
land
on
use,
it,
but not the zoning.
Correct.
yeah, when I voted on it, the land use map showed that it was acre lots.
That was probably after the general plan changed.
After the change, it went to 1 acre.
Yeah, because
So this would have been way before we voted on the general
So
plan.
I guess they're having me because Cindy Cox isn't here. Because I didn't make a decision on it.
Oh, that's true. You wouldn't have voted,
Yeah.
so I don't know why they want you. It's just
Special.
want to harass you. I don't know.
I guess we can look at it again.
yeah, we can look at
Just-
it.
those are-
So I can delay the whole thing by saying that you're willing to reconsider and asking to send in
Okay, well,
his
I'll-
reasons again, and you
I'll
can take a look at it again.
because I you know.
It is a different council slightly, because you're right, you didn't vote, so you've
Yeah.
got,
To me, it was, that was what I based my vote on, so I'll have to look at that back then. Because so he asked for this like the first few months of my term, in
so
2021?
it may have been before you even came in.
No, you were here. But
Yeah,
it was
pretty new.
because it would have been like my first few months of
Yeah, it
2021.
was pretty early on.
And then we ratified the general plan just after that?
Yeah. It was in the spring, we did the general plan, and
Okay,
he came like in January.
okay.
Okay.
All right, yeah, I'll have to look at the dates, so.
Well, let me take a look at all of that, and actually, you can put that on, well, I don't know whether you need to put it on the council agenda, but bring it back to this group at some point.
Okay.
So would that be something that would have to be a motion made? You don't think it would, or just?
Well, so I'll contact him and tell him you're willing to reconsider it. If you decide you want to do it, then we'd probably want a motion to settle the lawsuit.
Okay.
What's he looking for remediation?
Nothing,
What's his,
just the division.
he doesn't want money.
Because you and I were the.
Well, he wants money from selling the land, I'm sure. Well, and that would be part of it. He probably is, I haven't looked at the pleading, he's probably asked for attorney fees and costs and all sorts of junk. They always ask for that, but he would be very happy just to back off and take the two pieces. Okay?
Okay, yeah, because, you know, that's just on this, because we received this because it said we no longer had, well, because Brandon no longer was doing it, so.
Well, he had to send in a withdrawal of counsel on every case that he's currently involved in, so that's what generated that. But I sent the guy a note saying we're looking at it, so he's not going to be pushing.
Okay, good. Okay, wow, okay, thank you.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, so, agenda items, any questions? I had mentioned to Bryce if he'll just tell a little bit about the approval of the purchase of the emergency preparedness trailer. We'd already talked about it, and I told Cammie everybody was agreeable to it, and she said, well, because it wasn't something that was specifically in the budget, that we needed to have a promotion for that. So, any questions on that for Bryce, or anything you want him to explain about that before?
Do you want me to tell you about it?
Do you have an amount?
Yes. So the original price was, well, first of all, let me kind of back up. So this trailer, what it consists of, it's part of our emergency preparedness plan. And each city has what's called like a cash box or something. And in that, they have supplies for emergency, whatever that might be. It might be stretcher boards, bandages, whatever. Ours, over the last 20 years, has been up at Rocky Mountain Junior High School. And I guess stuff is really bad and you can't get into it. Anyway, there's some issues with that. And I think West Haven, I think we shared with West Haven. And they actually built, from my understanding, they built a shed or a couple sheds to house. No, they actually got a trailer, I believe, to house their stuff. So we're kind of on our own. So to fulfill kind of this need, you know, I told Dave to go look for a trailer that would be mobile, that would have that stuff. And so we found one. It's red. It's like 26 feet long. He paid 12. He was asking 14.5, and I think we ended up paying 12.5. But it's outfitted with electrical plugs on the outside, so you can hook up a generator. It's got a inverter inside. It's got 110 outlets inside. It's got a breaker box, so it's set up for what we need. So we could have a command post type thing. It's got shelving and stuff. So that's going to fulfill our need for some of the emergency preparedness stuff that really Weber County and FEMA is wanting us to do to be proactive. So he went ahead and purchased it with his own money, so he wouldn't lose it. He did not title it. It's not titled. So we need to reimburse him the $12.5 plus I think it was $22 or $25 that he put it on his insurance for a month. He says, I can't take it off because it'd be $50 to cancel it. And then he had to go, I'm going to text him real quick, and he had to drive somewhere to pick it up. I don't know if it was Lehigh or whatever, so he might have some mile reimbursement. So I don't know the exact amount, but it's $13,000. So, and that fund, those funds are coming from that 5% that we've been saving in the utility tax. That's why we did it for this purpose, so when these opportunities came up. And Dave's done a great job. He's went way above and beyond what I expected, and he's really kind of put us at the next level, I think. So that's what that would be. So I'm going to ask for your, support on paying him back. If not, he's just going to have to sell it, So,
Well, I think it's something, I think it'd be great for the city. I think,
yeah.
hopefully you'll support this, because I think it's something that we should have. I think we've kind of talked about that before, if there's an emergency, not that there won't be help coming, but we won't be one of the first places they'll come.
Right.
So any of this emergency preparedness we can do on our own. So do you have any questions for Bryce? And again, it's an agenda item, so we can talk about it if anybody. Okay. One thing on the resolution for the interlocal agreement for the technical forensic services, which is CSI. So I had review this interlocal, and then I actually called over to the Sheriff's Department and got some clarification on it. Because one question we had was the amount that they had in this interlocal agreement, was it in addition to our contract? It is not, it's included in our contract. But the reason why it's worded that way is because not every city within Weaver County that uses CSI does have they're not a contract city. So for example, like North Ogden, South Ogden, Pleasant View that have their own police departments have to pay that additional amount. So they did verify with me that we signed that interlocal. It's what we've always done, but it's not an additional.
So it's not an increase in cost.
It's not an increase in cost.
Part of our sheriff's contract.
Yes.
And they'll determine the division based on the same formula you're using for your contract?
Yes.
Okay. Be nice if they put that in there.
Yeah.
Just a little few words.
Yeah, well, so I called one of the other mayors and said, okay, we had this, and anyway, and he said, you know what, you're like the third mayor that's called me on this. So then the Sheriff's Department, she ended up sending us out some clarification on it. So, yeah. So I think that's something, that's
I've looked at the contract, nothing wrong with the contract. It just seemed odd that they'd want you to pay if you're already paying for it.
Yeah. Okay, so
Which
one.
we're not.
Apparently not.
One thing too, on amending the existing subdivision fence, I also talked to Reed about this because we questioned last meeting about having the letter.
Yeah, here's the deal. You remember you passed the ordinance that says that subdivisions, unless they are multifamily and so forth, are all done at the planning commission level. Well, one of the conditions of approval of a subdivision is that they have the approval on the fence. Well, if planning commission can approve the subdivision, but it's not valid until the city council approves the fence, you really can't do what you want to do. So you really have to make that simple change of just saying the fence approval is now up to them, since you'll never see those subdivisions.
And then we talked about the letter, because we never had a letter, did you say in part of our ordinance? That's more of a policy.
You can certainly put that in a policy. You could put it in the ordinance, but it's never been there in the past. So it seemed to me that's maybe one of the building policies or subdivision policies that you have that is separate.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, because then they could, just when they have to go meet with the technical review committee, that they make sure that they have that letter. So then when it comes to planning commission, they can say, yes, we have the letter, which is, I think, what they've done in the past.
Are they is the planning commission creating some regulations on subdivisions or something? Seems like they're doing something. I don't.
Just Title 10.
Yeah, they have.
Well, Title 10 is done.
We need to make a checklist for application completeness.
Okay, so that would be the place to put it, in something like that. So,
I know they're working on the policy and procedures too, if that is what you're talking about, Malcolm.
that may be what I'm thinking.
So this motion then is just to move that to the planning commission?
This motion is just for us to approve that ordinance, saying that now this is yes, what you said, Dale.
Yeah.
So planning
If-
commission's the one that approves it.
If you look at the ordinance, it's a one word change.
Yeah,
Planning commission instead of city council.
yeah.
Okay.
We didn't even realize that until it came up, and we thought, well, that didn't make any sense, because there was no reason for it to come to us.
Right.
That should just be only going to planning commission.
Well, and it may be a violation of state law too. If they say
Yeah.
approval has to be done with the planning commission, this really makes it a city council.
Okay. Any questions on, tonight we're going to have the discussion, motion for rezone request for Terra Strata. Anybody have any questions, discussion on that? You want to-
I have one glaring question that should be in everybody's mind, is how do we move forward or even entertain a motion like this when it goes against our land use policy? It's on the general plan. Like, this isn't even allowed right now. Like, don't we need to open the general plan?
Yeah, what you can't actually approve the subdivision, because you're right, you've got to do a rezone, you've got to do a change in the map, and you've also got to do a change in some of the wording in the general plan. So my thought, and I've talked to Malcolm about this, and I think we're on the same page, would be if you're favorable to what they want to do, you just say, we conceptually are okay, but the changes need to be made so that we can actually
So the rezone
entertain
can't be
approval.
approved
Cannot be approved.
tonight.
No. But you can indicate that you're willing to let them do it when the changes are made, so that we don't put their people and our people to a whole lot of work
Right.
unless it's going to be done.
So
Can
in
we approve it with conditions?
the motion, well, no, the rezone can't be approved, period. I mean, the concept can be approved with whatever conditions we come up with that we've talked about before, but the rezone is off the table tonight because it's not allowable.
You can't rezone until you
Without a
change the
public hearing.
map.
Right?
No, you've already had the public hearings.
Just a change to the general plan land use map. It's not allowable.
So in our, because I just had Malcolm pull that up for me, and I think, do you say it was like 10.5.4 or something? We do have in our ordinance that we can open the general plan, do a rezone, close the general plan, all in the same motion.
But it has to be on the agenda to do so, and it's not.
So what are you guys saying?
I'm saying it can't be rezoned tonight.
Well, he's saying you can approve conceptually what they want to do, which I think is what they're looking for,
Yeah.
with the understanding that then we'll come back at the next meeting or a subsequent meeting and make the changes necessary to allow it to happen.
Correct.
So Reed, we could make a motion on conceptually with some conditions tonight, right? Is that
Yeah,
what
the
we're
concept.
talking- Yeah, okay.
Well, and part of that too we talked about was with the developers agreement too, because when we've been cautioned this with other cities, you never want to just say, we are giving you a rezone until we actually have a developers agreement, so we know what it is.
That's another factor that would be important to have when you
Yes.
finally do the final thing. So I think we're not looking at doing it tomorrow. I think you're, but again, there's a whole lot of work that's going to go into that development agreement.
Right.
There's a fair amount of work that's going to go into the changes in the general plan and the general plan map, and then there's the rezone. And let's not do all of that unless all of you are in accord that you want to move ahead.
Well, step A was we got a recommendation from the planning commission. We need to decide what we're gonna do with that recommendation tonight.
Yeah.
So we either say we're okay with this concept or add some things to it, take away some things to it. And, and like Reed said, there's a lot of work that would be wasted if we just said no. So I think we just need to be careful not to approve a rezone tonight.
Well, you can't do that.
We can't do it.
I think our wording just right.
So we do need to, though, like you're saying, Ryan, have something that we could suggest. I mean, we can make, so is there any motion at all that we make tonight that we can say we accept the recommendation by planning commission with the conditions of,
Well, you can't
guess
grant the rezone until the maps change. But what you can do is say, we like if you do, we like the recommendation of the planning commission. We fully intend to move forward with the project. We give direction to our staff to do whatever we need to do so that we can do a final approval of this sometime in the near future. And that would include, I think, a change in the general plan somewhat, a change in the map certainly for two things, to cover the housing part and also to make it clear that the commercial is within the area that you indicated that's pretty vague as to how close it has to be to the highway. And third, that then there'll be a rezone. So those things, and to create an agreement an overall agreement, development agreement on the whole thing that you can all review when you do the approvals. But I think that's a reasonable approach.
Do you think it would be beneficial for us to give them so they kind of have somewhere to go? Like, because I know when we met, you know, and kind of talked about it, there's been thrown out having an Aldi patio homes. You'd mentioned about the 3rd-acre, half-acre, some mixed use. Would it be beneficial if tonight we could at least give them our recommendation of what we think? So as they go forward, because it's like we said before, you know, Malcolm, they don't want to spend hours and hours doing something if it's not something that you are even going to be agreeable to.
Well, not only us, but them. Are they gonna be
Yes.
agreeable to
Yes.
what our conditions are?
Yes.
If not, then there's no sense moving forward.
Right.
Yes,
On both of our sides.
yeah.
So then, in that motion, we just tell them what we like, and then the ball's in their court, so to speak.
I look at this maybe as, you know, when there was the one meeting when Alan Karras came and asked about possibly buying that little piece of ground. And they didn't really want to spend a lot of money if they didn't somewhat have our, and so we said, yes, we're agreeable to that, and then they proceeded.
I think it's very much like that.
Looking at that tonight, is that we have some kind of motion saying, yes, we're agreeable, maybe with these, and then so at least that has something to work on.
I think there's no question that they're looking around where they're going to build. They're going to build a place somewhere, and they want some understanding that this is going to be the place, or they're going to be going somewhere else. And I think they're entitled to that. It's been a long time.
Yep.
Yeah, I think so too. Well, so is that something you want to discuss now? So we kind of have some recommendations for them? What are your thoughts on what your recommendations are?
Well, the Planning Commission had quite a few good recommendations, I felt. You know, the things that they listed, I felt were well thought out. And, you know, there are a few things that I might want to add to that or change a little bit.
So what are you even thinking as far as what type? Like, you know, like Debbie, you mentioned 3rd and half. It was brought up all patio. What are your thoughts of that as far as recommending to them what you would like to see for the you and the housing?
Well, the way that I see it, they wouldn't get as many houses in, which I don't know they'd be agreeable to. I'd like to see some larger lots thrown in with what they're proposing. But I know that their main goal is to get as many homes in as they can because profits are very important to them. So I don't know if they would be agreeable to something that I'm thinking would be better for the area as far as the surrounding homes, you know, the surrounding residents. That's the word I'm looking for. The surrounding residents would be happier with. And so that's what I'm thinking of, but I don't know anybody else.
What is the drive or the push that they would, maybe it's like you said, monetary, you know, to have so many homes in there, or
Yeah.
more slab, commercial, whatever areas. I was just up in Heber, and well, they had a Smith's, but they moved, and they do have their little gas station thing in there, and then one little tiny spot. I'm sure they're going to do a couple more of little slab commercial things, but I didn't see anywhere where they were going to be doing homes by it. So I'm like, is it just a conditional thing? You know, if you don't let us do homes, we don't want to do it, or is that do they think they're giving us a gift by saying, hey, we'll build you these homes in here for your residents too?
So they requested half acre on the north side, abutting the half acre that we already have. And
Yeah,
they requested quarter acre on the
on
west
the
side.
west side. Okay.
But one of our conditions was third.
Thirds, he said they'd be agreeable to thirds.
This backs up to the half acres, right?
Clarify that they will do thirds, but probably something you want to mention.
Yeah.
So that was the residential homes, was adjacent to what's already
To
there.
there. Okay. All right.
I think that the thing to keep in mind is that all the rhetoric we've heard out of the governor's office in the last little while, and I say rhetoric, I think he's dead serious that he's going to force cities into having affordable housing. And if this solves that for your city, it seems to me that's a good thing.
Well, I asked him point blank at one meeting. I asked him if he was going to include affordable housing, and he said that really wasn't what he was looking to do.
Aren't patio homes
I don't know.
was
Now,
gonna
he
say,
may have changed his,
Relative.
Define affordable
Yeah.
housing.
yeah, and
What
he
does that
may
mean?
he may have changed it, but I said, would this
Everyone-
accommodate some of our affordable housing?
Yeah.
But he had told me that, you know, that wasn't
No.
really their goal right now. And so,
It'd be nice if it could be though, huh,
yes,
that we got
I
some
mean,
of
if,
that.
if he did
Yeah.
affordable housing,
Yeah.
then that would be a
I,
great
I
thing.
think it's a,
But see, these patio homes over here are not affordable that we have in Hooper. They don't fall within affordable
how about
housing.
that?
So affordable now even, which is,
For something,
yeah,
Well, the
Yeah.
state has kind of a criteria of affordable. It's like, there's a threshold, I think, of 400,000, and there's some one-time down payment money, that kind of thing. So, you know, we could ask him that a portion of that would fulfill that need. That would help. I think the big issue that I think all of us, with this project, you know, I'll just bring it up and we probably ought to talk about it and talk about the pros and cons, is the CRA. And so basically, what that is a funding mechanism to provide infrastructure in an area, but it's taken from tax revenue that should come to the city. So, looking at that, you know, LRB's done some projections of forecasting, and they are pretty good, pretty accurate at what they do. That would, in my mind, I know we're supposed to, I hear this all the time, we need to develop and grow responsibly, and I totally agree. Going right out of the gate and being $2 million in debt, just like that, is not responsible in my mind. So in this study, all the taxing entities participate. So you've got the school district, you've got the fire, you've got Weber County, everybody participates, and the city. And the funds that would come from us, they've indicated would come from our utility tax, our sales tax, and our property tax. And from my research and Ryan's and others, the taxing entities generally stay in the saddle about 5 years, and then they're out. They're not going to stay in the full 24 years like this is projected. Worst case scenario, say if Hooper doesn't make it, and they move on for whatever reason, we've seen it happen before, we're still liable for that. So I anticipate this payback from the city is probably going to increase. We're probably going to have to put in more to it. To make a clean development, I believe the developer, in fact, in our ordinance, it states that, you know, if there's certain zoning that's granted, it's the responsibility of the developer to provide the infrastructure. I think it would be smart on our end that we require them to do that. And day one, we're making money, and not because it's going to take 3-4 years before we start generating money. We're going to have to subsidize this program. So in my mind, that CRA is a huge liability to us. You know, it's not smart development.
And let's be honest, the city doesn't have the money
We don't have the
to
money.
give to participate in something
Right.
like that, like
I
all these other
agree.
taxing entities do.
Right.
We can't just say, oh yeah, we're gonna give you this much money. We don't have that to give,
We don't.
No.
right?
and that was one of the planning commission's
Recommendations.
recommendations, was that we don't have a CRA.
Well, one of the thoughts would be, what does the CRA cover? If it covers sales tax, you're right, you're going to get clipped a bit. If it covers property tax,
Well, that's what's listed in here. That they'll take a
Right.
portion to cover our end of it. They could dip into our utility tax, our property tax, which is not very much.
you'd have to agree to any of those. To give up property tax is no big deal, because there's
Right.
not anything
There's
there.
nothing there,
But,
yeah.
but property taxes for the other entities is a whole lot of money. So if
Sure.
they did it strictly on property taxes, you'd get a huge windfall.
But they're not going to stay for 24 years.
That was my next.
They're not
question
gonna do
brought
that.
up. So you're familiar with the fire district? Do they stay in for 20 years, 25 years?
There's been entities asked for 15 or 20 years, and they've said no. Max is, what I've seen is between 10 to 12 is the max that they've stated, at a lower percentage rate. You know, they've asked for upwards of 100%. Of course, that's,
Yeah.
you know, all of it. And
The longer it goes, the less money
you can only
Stay in.
stay in for, in a 10-year period, at the most, like 50%.
So you're saying it's a little bit of a gamble on what they'll do. We don't know what they're gonna commit to.
Well, they're asking for 70% if you're
these
reading
guys.
that.
Right.
70% for 24 years.
But the school district hasn't agreed to that. They're just
Nobody
assuming.
knows.
Oh, no,
Nobody's
no
assuming.
one's
It's
agreed.
the LRB study.
Right.
So I've been to a lot of meetings with CRAs, and even with them, I'll tell you, I still don't feel 100% confident in my knowledge on it. Plus, we're brand new at this. Like, some cities have already done a lot of commercial development and we're not. So I think we need to be really cautious about this. I feel confident that we need to have the SMIS, and I even feel comfortable, Debbie, how you're saying some biggers and some others. But I think I need more information.
Need a little education.
Yes, I do, because like I say, I bet I've been to 8 meetings where they've explained all this, but I still couldn't say that I feel 100% and we've never done it.
Right.
Like, we're on foreign territory here in Hooper. So I think that's one thing we would want to work out with them is we need a little more assurance of what we're actually getting into. We don't have the money, you're right. We don't have $2 million to put in the lift station. We don't really have the availability to be able to say, you take our money, our sales tax. Like, sometimes they'll say, oh, this business comes and you can have 5 years worth of sales tax. We don't have 5 years of sales tax to give up. So I think we need to hear more what it is. That still doesn't mean, I don't think we should come up with some parameters.
I think what was just a tad frustrating is when we had that meeting on the 27th is I think they've known all along that this has been our hang up. It's not necessarily the commercial development, it's been how it's funding on the backs of Hooper citizens. And they've known that, and we've kind of indicated, well, can't you find a different solution, do some pioneer agreements with some of these other developers that are going to benefit from it, and share the cost amongst those who are going to make the money. Hooper City we're going to make the least amount of money of everybody. The state of Utah, Weber County, the developers, I mean, we're at the very bottom of the food chain, either last or second to the last. So in my mind, I think we need to protect every dime that we get off the taxes and let them find the solution. It's not our problem that it's not developable how they want it. They need to find the solution, I believe. And our ordinance does say under certain zonings that the developer is required to provide those services and infrastructure.
Yeah.
We shouldn't be paying for it.
Sometime I hope, though, that as a city we become a little more financially
Sure.
robust.
Right.
Because all of us have sewer, and when we had sewer, no one came to us and said, okay, you have to pay, $500,000 for this lift station. Sometimes I feel bad because we have residents out there, like for instance, those people on 4700 that have been waiting for a long time because we cannot provide that. We can't. Even if we want to, Hooper City doesn't have $2 million to put in a lift station. We have a lot
See,
of our residents.
And we
that
don't
are in-
have sewer.
Yeah, they're in the west end of Hooper that don't have it either. So I don't know. I mean, I think we need to hear and we need to figure out what it's going to be because plain and simple, we don't have the money to pay. I wish we did, but we don't. So we're going to have to come up with something, and they have expressed, and I've talked to them, they can work out some. We've got to work out some financing tools, or this can't go. Plain and simple, because we don't have the money. We don't have $2 million to put in a lift station.
But don't you
And I
agree
think
with Bryce that that's their issue to come up with the financing? That the city really, I feel if I was a developer that would be my burden to come up with the infrastructure for my development. I wouldn't expect someone else to have to burden that or do all the legwork for it or anything. Because the fact of the matter is they're the ones who are going to be profiting the greatest from this project. I mean, there's just no doubt about it. We won't be profiting nearly as much as they will.
Well, it's a big problem statewide. There's not one meeting I don't go to when every city doesn't say, the problem we have is with infrastructure. Every city is dealing with this. And it comes down to sewer and water. They will say at every meeting, I didn't realize I was going to be mayor or city council and the majority of my time is spent on sewer and water. Well, it is. Every city has the same problem. So when the governor built, every mayor is saying, okay, but then help us with our infrastructure then. You can't expect us to, how do we do it then? Like how are we going to get this if we don't have the capability? So no, you're right. Somehow they've got to come up with a plan because we don't have the money to pay for it. We don't. And it shouldn't be, like we've said, our responsibility to try to,
Those costs factor into the affordable housing equation.
yeah,
You know,
they do.
Infrastructure costs aren't
Yes.
cheap,
Yeah,
you know, as we have talked about.
yeah.
And so, when you talk about affordable housing, you just can't walk into a field and start throwing up houses and say, they're affordable, you know?
Yeah.
There's so many things that happen before that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's just,
Well, maybe we give them some of our ideas and let them come up with ideas, and if tonight it's just going to be yes, kind of like we did with, okay, yes, we're in favor, but we need to have more, like, what are we gonna do? We need to have a developers agreement, we need to work out the financing, and at least gives them something to start working on, what we're thinking of, and something for Malcolm and staff to start working on, what they would be agreeable with. One thought I had was if you would be all right with this, if someone would want to make the motion, I wondered if we should move public comments prior to that discussion, because if there's anybody that's here to say something, it might be that. You know, we have public comments before, so if we just did the approval of the minutes and then the check register, if anybody has any questions, that's really not a motion. But then just move the public comments just prior to the action item of the discussion and motion.
it's actually number 4. Public comments is
Yeah,
number 4.
yes, move 4 down to right before number 8. Because I think if people are here, they might be wanting to have comments maybe pertaining to Smiths. So I wondered if it might be more, and it's not a public hearing, it's just public comments. And another thing we talked about once, and I don't know if this is up to you, but limiting public comments to maybe a half hour, you know, we kind of talked about that. Because it isn't a public hearing, if you want to do that, we don't have to, or if that's something, or we can leave it where it is. I just thought maybe it would be more applicable if that's
I think that sounds fine.
It's okay where it's at. We can limit it to 30 minutes.
Yeah.
I think.
Limit it to 30 minutes, you're thinking? And then do you want to leave it up above, or do you want to just have it before we start to talk about the Terrace Drive?
You could move it out.
It's okay where it's at.
No, I think it's fine where it is.
Yeah,
Don't say it.
because, public comments are open to anything, right? So they can talk about anything they want.
We took out the sentence that says cannot pertain to
Yes,
agenda
it can
items.
be anything.
So it's
Okay.
anything.
So leave it where it is, and
Yeah.
you want to do it to 30?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, well, we'll certainly have a discussion. I don't know if we really came up with anything we really,
I just had a question on this ratification of check register. Is that just for information?
it's just for information. So that's one thing we had talked about doing is, which I'm going to let Morgan explain that a little bit, how this has to do with paying bills and things. We're going to try to do that, have, so every time you can see the check register.
So that, would it show income for that month and outgoing for that month?
So,
Because this one didn't, it just showed.
oh no, so
Check.
it was just the check register. Yeah. So income, I think, is on your financials every time, because the income just is like, if we get any sales tax, property tax usually only comes once a year. So it's not even necessarily like new income comes every, so that, no, those were just expenses.
So I don't know if Morgan didn't know the answer, but Cammy might. So I noticed there was a few that were pertaining to JUB for subdivisions, like subdivision.
Yeah.
So are those costs being passed on to the developer, or they are? Okay,
I better be.
for sure?
They-
Yeah, I generate application fees for all the subdivisions. And
So maybe like Dale
So
said,
that-
we might
so
need
that
to
would
see
show
the
an
income. So there'd be income
For
from
that.
that to offset those costs for us.
that's the idea behind, they have built-in hours for engineering, and then I just, calculate it.
And then they pay the
But
developer.
yeah, I put Morgan puts an invoice together, and I give them in contact with her, and I don't know how to operate the sheet. The Morgan.
Well, so one question I received with Morgan, so, we'll give you the check register every time for you to look through, so if there's any questions, those checks will not be mailed to those entities until you've had a chance to review those. But for example, like we'll have a meeting on June 17th where you can review those. And then our next meeting won't be until July 17th, and in that interim, if some of those she doesn't pay, we accrue a late fee. So we weren't really sure how you wanted to do that. Are you okay if you just get those, and if you have any questions? Because we're really not, it's not a motion. You can let Morgan know, or myself know, or Cammie, because we, like you say, it's kind of, well, we can't.
Well, that's why you've got ratification, right? Because it may have already happened.
Well, yes, except for we're not, like
Well,
she's
we're
got all
not,
the.
but there'll be a case.
Oh, yes, there could be unless, yeah. So,
If they're gonna be
Okay.
late, just send them.
okay.
Yeah, I would think.
Oh, yeah,
Well,
I
especially when it's
agree.
gonna be like a month, you
Sure.
know, we
Yeah.
thought it
Yeah.
might be, because that was one case, you know, going from like July, or June to July, because some of them really do late fees. Was the format that came in okay
Yeah, we got it. It down.
with how that was? You know, it tried to say like what those, yeah, the description and the code, anything more you would want on that besides that check register like it was?
Just what we talked about with JB.
Yeah,
I mean,
just that, just verify.
We always talk about general engineering or subdivision,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
there's so many general rubber stamps. It's like, okay, what subdivision, what engineering?
Right.
Yeah.
That would be
Yeah,
nice.
that
I know
would be
you've
nice
kind
to
of
have.
indicated, you know, that it does, but I'd kind of like to see it in writing.
Yeah.
Specific.
Yeah.
Well, and that's one thing
Well,
too,
you
where,
guys, when you guys get it, just says subdivision fee, with what you're.
Well, what
See,
subdivision?
No, I'm asking, that's what you guys see, it just says subdivision fee.
Yeah, and then if
Are you able to
it's
modify
been
it?
offset by a payment from somebody else.
So within the JV invoice, they give me development review, and then in their drop-down description, it shows what subdivisions they're working on. If I type in too much invoice description, it doesn't show everything. So
Yeah.
I'm more than welcome to send that information.
Well, I'm just concerned that we're collecting for that invoice. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
The
We
work.
wanna make sure that you're seeing we collected for something, like we
Yeah.
actually pay for that.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
one match, right? When we collect, are you able to categorize them? 'Cause I have no idea. I just did the invoice to Morgan, are you able to categorize so that they see?
I just want to make sure we're not paying for something we shouldn't be.
well, that's something we need
That's-
to do our fee schedule, which we talked about having a separate meeting to do that, because that's a really good point. We want to make sure that we are charging enough fee, that it's
That's a good
covering
point,
us.
because in your guys' fee schedule, I don't know how great of a job you know, but you have a 1% escrow review fee that we're supposed to charge for subdivisions, and Jared wants to charge, but I don't know if it hasn't, but that'll be, you know, substantial, 15, 20 grand. Those are for the inspections that take place throughout the subdivision process, so you will be seeing pretty large ones coming through occasionally, and that'll, you know, account for some of JEB's costs, some of Jared's while they go out and inspect these, you know, escrow items. Yeah, I mean, we can work on categorizing the charge.
Try to get Cammie to see how to do it.
But we really do need to look at our fees, because maybe we're not charging enough, maybe they're not. So if they're not,
Yeah,
then
if it's-
we might not, so. But I don't know when you really want to talk about that fee schedule, because our next meeting is June 17th, when we have to do the budget, so I don't know
You, the
how
financial guy,
long that
it's
will
gonna be
take.
checking
Do
all
you
of
think
this.
we'd have time, well, that's kind of a separate, do
Good
you
luck
think
on
we'd have
that.
time to talk about the fee schedule then, or if not, it would be like July 17th, we talked about that.
I can try July.
Yeah, July sounds fine.
Okay, then let's plan on doing that, we'll have that, and maybe we won't have a lot of other things, because it's gonna take a little bit of time to go through that fee schedule.
Yeah.
But it really is something that we need to do, so.
Okay. Sounds good.
Okay, anything else said?
Let's have a meeting.
Thank you.
You okay?
I'll pull this
Once you
chair
get
out.
up initially.
I know after I stand up,
Yeah.
it's kind of
It hurts.
for a minute. Oh, thank you.
Recording in progress.
We would like to start our City Council meeting. It is Thursday, June 5th. I am Mayor Sherry Bingham and I will be conducting this meeting. We appreciate all of you being here. We are going to start with a Pledge of Allegiance that I will lead you in, and then we will have a reverence by Councilmember Wilcox. So if everyone will please stand and repeat after me.
Our Heavenly Father, we're grateful for the opportunity to meet here together as citizens of this great community who ask that your Spirit be with us and help us to do what's best for the community and the citizens. We give thanks to Thee for those who protect us locally and nationally, and our armed forces and military personnel. Bless them, keep them safe, and we give thanks again to Thee for all that we have and enjoy. We say this in the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
Okay, thank you. So just an announcement coming up. Everyone's probably aware that this year is our 100th year of Pepper Tomato Days. So we will be getting a newsletter out here within the next few weeks with all of our exciting events we're going to be having. So everyone will want to make sure and be aware of that. Our next City Council meeting is going to be held on June 17th rather than the 19th. June 19th is a holiday, and so that will be our budget meeting. It is going to be a public hearing. So if you want to plan on attending, that will be on June 17th at 7 o'clock p.m. And our meeting on July the 3rd will be canceled due to the 4th of July holiday. So the first thing we have on our agenda is public comments, and we are going to limit our public comments to 30 minutes. And so feel free to come up. You have 3 minutes to state your comment. If you'll come up and state your name, and we'll give you time to come up if there are any public comments at this time.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council. That added to my 3 minutes, I'm sure. My name is Bob Dandoy. I live, I'm giving my address just for the record, 3903 South, 650 West in Roy. Now, the reason why I'm here, and I just want to take a few seconds if I can to just share a thought or two, and I really thought my family would have been here because they are residents of Hooper, and they certainly love this city as much as I do. I love your open space. I like what you've got going here. It's wonderful. And I will tell you, preserve it as best you can. But there's an important piece I want to share with you tonight, if you don't mind. Roy City is struggling this year, as we have for the last couple of years with our budgets. We can't generate enough sales tax to pay for what we need to get paid. These are just keeping up with our expenses. And as a result of that, for the third year in a row, we're going to contemplate another property tax increase to be able to catch up. We're not growing, we're just trying to stay even. And I feel bad. It's disheartening to me that we continue after 3 years still fighting this battle about revenue. And our chief revenue coming in the city is sales and use tax. That is our prime one. We get about $9 million a year on that. Now, let me just make it clear. In Roy City in terms of total gross purchases gets about $500 million in sales. $500 million in sales. And 25% of that, roughly around $140 million, comes from 4 businesses. Winco, Harmon's, Kent's, and Weinerger's. Every one I just mentioned are grocery stores. I'm telling you, Council, Mayor, they are cash cows in Roy City. They make us a lot of money every year. My comment to you would be is, please consider what you're about to consider in a few moments about having a Smith's Marketplace in your city. It is a wonderful opportunity. They don't take up a lot of space, but more importantly, they seem to be able to weather the times when people just seem to run low on money. They keep generating revenue, and we make a lot of it. Make it clear, and I'm a data person. In 2024, and I apologize if you think I sneak under the tent, but I look at data. Hooper generated $75 million, a little over $75 million worth of gross purchases. That was yours, and that includes a lot of things. People buying stuff on Amazon, shopping in your stores, whatever they may do. Our 4 grocery stores made $140 million in gross sales. And I'm not even counting all the Amazons, the car lots, and everything else. I suggest to you is there should be a strong consideration to preserve all that you preserve. It's wonderful. It's great. And trust me, I tell people, if you want wide open spaces, come to Hooper, come to West Haven. But if you want to basically have a business that's going to help you in the long run, it's going to make a difference in terms of having the revenue to sustain what you need to keep this city running, put a grocery store in here. Put a Smith's Marketplace in this here, and you will see a significant difference. It makes a difference. Now, I say this in risk of this. Your residents more than likely shop in Roy. And why not? It's right there. But Roy collects that revenue for you. And for me to tell you from a guy like me who coming and says, hey, you ought to put a store in here, the only suggestion is your people, your residents will shop there. And they're not the only ones. I guarantee you, including my wife, is going to shop at your Smith's. Because that's a great store. And when I tell you this, I'm telling you, some people in my city will basically say, why is this guy doing this? He just cut our sales tax revenue. And it's not about that. It's about providing choices for all of our residents. You share your income with us, we can share our income with you. You will find that will be a great decision for this great city called Hooper. Thanks for the time.
Is there anyone else have a comment?
Bruce Taylor. For me, the pump station is the starting point. Stuart Adams is not willing to pay a cent for it. However, he can come up with programs that will use someone else's money. I don't like it. This proposal is massive. When you drive around this 40 acres, 25 acres of commercial, 15 of homes, if approved, this would become a city of its own, not representing anything that looks like Hooper City. In the independent study that was done, within the 25 acres of commercial, it states that there will be 1,024 parking stalls in this. That's 41 cars per acre, kind of crazy. My opinion would be to deny this, let Stuart move on, quit wasting their time and ours. We're not interested in this, and I think we should deny this. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other comments?
Natalie Zewick, 5067 South, 5300 West. I echo everything that gentleman just said. I'm with him. Stuart wants to put this in. He can fund the whole thing. There's no reason why we as residents have to up our taxes to put this in. He's going to be making all the money off of it. We've talked about this many times. We don't want our city to look like West Haven, 4,000. We all know what that looks like. And you bring this in. Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
You bring this in, and our city's just going to grow and grow and grow, and it's going to look like West Haven. But again, if he wants to put it in, he should fund the whole thing.
Okay. Any other comments?
Lynn Bagley. I live in Hooper. I moved here a year and a half ago from Syracuse. 30 years ago, Syracuse was this little wonderful community. And what happened was Smith and other high-rise housing, and we would come to council meetings and they would say, I'm sorry, we'll listen to you, but we've got our minds made up. I hope that your minds are not made up, that we can have a choice where we want to stay rural and in this lovely community.
Garth Hubbard, my bet is that without the Smiths, within 5 to 7 years, we will be unincorporated Weber County, and then we will have apartments. Thank you.
Marsha Warwood, I live in Hooper also. I'm not against the Smiths, I'm not. My problem is that I understand that with the CRA, I don't see where we're going to get the money to support all that for the amount of years that we have to pay for whatever this company wants us to pay for. And so I don't know if you have those numbers and you feel like it's a good thing and that it'll work out and you can see all those numbers and they add up and we say, yep, we can do it and we won't have problems with our budget, go for it. But if you can't do that, if those numbers don't add up, I don't think we should do it because it's not going to get us enough money to do what we need to do right now. We have to wait, I don't know, is it 10 years? I don't really know how many years it is. But anyway, I just would say, if the numbers don't add up, don't do it.
Anyone else?
Monte Dixon. I've been following this since the beginning. I'm a little bit frustrated with the council and with the city. in regards to this meeting, it wasn't highly publicized. We didn't get a letter in the mail. We got nothing but a post on Facebook. That's not, being transparent that you guys promised us. Also, when you decided to come, Stuart Adams, you said, if you don't want us here, just tell us. And we said it then, and we'll say it again. We do not want Smiths here. We do not want Smiths here. Vote your conscience. This is a small town. We want it to stay that way.
Tony Zuick, and I want to add to what my wife and the other gentleman said. We don't want Smiths here. We don't want to pay for Smiths to be here. If they can't self-suffice and do their own, we don't need to suffer from it. And it sounds like Roy City is upside down because of all their businesses and all their confusion is not paying their bills. When the Weber County lady came in with Stuart, she said this would bring anywhere from 50 to 500,000 in sales tax revenue. That won't even bring us one extra sheriff into Hooper. So what good is Smiths? We can't patrol what we got. How are we going to patrol a Smiths and all the other businesses that come along with it? And why should we pay for their lift pump? It's only to support them. Thanks.
My name's Stan Thurgood. I work for the city. I live down here. I don't know who we is, but I'm not part of the we. I'll make my own I will make my own decisions. I'm in favor of Smiths. I'm not in favor of paying for it, but I'm in favor of the store.
Hi, my name is Mandy Medina Harris. I actually own some of the property on 4700. And for our family, it is an opportunity for my nieces to have a job in the future. It is an opportunity for us in the community to have a place that we can go and not have to drive to other cities, and to be able to contribute when we make our purchases. We have to think about the long term, folks. My family and my husband and I have already paid over $10,000 to hook up to a sewer pump station that doesn't even exist. We paid that years ago. We were forced by the city with a letter that said you have 3 months to pay before we repave the street. We've already paid for this. We're just asking for folks to think about more than just the immediate bill that we have. Yes, it is a 25-year commitment or whatever it is. And hopefully the businesses will contribute to that. But we have to think about the long term. I want Hooper to exist. I don't want to be annexed by Roy. I don't want to be annexed by West Haven. And I certainly don't want to see the monstrosity of those huge developments that are 8 and 10 stories tall. We would love to see smaller homes. We would love to retain some of the view and some of the small community feel. And we're just asking for folks to think short term and long term for us and for our future generations. Thank you.
Okay, are there any other comments?
Hi, my name's David Craig. I just wanted to introduce myself. I live at 5646 West, 4000 South. I know the job that you do is a big responsibility. I just declared my candidacy for District 2. I look forward to the opportunity to serve the people of the city.
Any other comments?
Tracy Woodward. My thing is, every time you say anything, it's all about the revenue, the revenue, the revenue. Well, if we look at how long it's going to take before we actually get the revenue, I mean, Stuart Adams says they're not going to be able to 2027. It's going to take 2 years to build. That's 2029, and it's going to be 5 or 6 more years. So we're looking at 2035. That if the city even gets anything. So I hope that we're looking into that as well. And not, well, if we say yes, that next day we're going to start getting revenue in, because we're not. It's 10 more years. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments? Seeing none, then we will move on to the agenda. So the next thing is the approval of the minutes dated May 15th, 2025. Council, have you had a chance to review those minutes? Were there any corrections or additions? Okay, if none, is there someone that would like to make a motion to approve?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, motion was made by Councilmember Hill. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second was made by Councilmember Maragoni. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the next thing then is the approval of the minutes dated May 27th, 2025. Any additions or corrections to those minutes? If not, is there someone that would like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, motion was made by Councilmember Fowers. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second was made by Councilmember Hill. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. So the next thing then on our agenda is the ratification of the check register, which is something we're going to be doing in our minutes, in our meetings from now on. So did anybody have any questions? This isn't something that we need to have a motion on. It's just something for your approval to look through the check register. If any questions, you can reach out to myself, to Morgan, or to Cami. Any questions on that? On the check register? Okay. Okay, so we will move on then. So the first thing we're going to be discussing tonight then is a rezone request for Terra Strata LLC. And we have a representative here from Terra Strata. If you would like to come up and give us any information you would like to present to us at this time.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate the work of the Planning Commission, the public, and the City Council, and the work we did in the last work meeting. We have a recommendation before you from the Planning Commission. The recommendation is for a PUD for the area around the commercial and then a commercial rezone. Our application was for half-acre lots on the north, quarter-acre lots on the west, and we've agreed to actually modify the quarter acres to a third. We're looking for some guidance there as to what you'd like to see, whether you want us to continue with the Planning Commission recommendation of an entire project PUD, or whether you're looking for the bifurcation with single-family lots against the residential. We're also looking for some clarification. There's some confusion on the master or general plan. The general plan in this area is, I think, larger lots, but the general plan also gives direction very clearly that there's commercial along 5500. And it then indicates in the general plan that the density is supposed to happen around the commercial. You probably wouldn't do the entire strip along 5500 as commercial because there just isn't enough demand to do it clear up and down the entire frontage of 5500 like the general plan calls. So the idea, I think, in the general plan, if I read it right, was you find a commercial node that you would want to have that commercial happen in. When you have the commercial there, then the general plan says that density should be there. So we actually think the PUD follows the general plan very clearly, that once you've decided where the commercial is, that the general plan would allow that PUD to happen without opening your general plan again. There could be another opinion that says, well, no, this is for larger lots, so you need to open it up. We're looking for direction there, and we kind of think that perhaps because there are some questions about how to move ahead, you heard from LRB that the sewer lift station is, and you've heard it tonight, is a fairly difficult process to be able to manage. We think a development agreement would be appropriate. And so if there were any type of motion tonight, we think it ought to be a contingent motion on actually a development agreement being put in place and that any action done would be contingent on that development agreement, so if it didn't happen the way the city council wanted, the rezone or the action wouldn't happen. So we're looking actually for a contingent action tonight because we think a development agreement is probably essential to be able to answer some of the questions you have, so thank you.
Thank you. Do you have questions, council, that you would like to address to the Terra Strata group tonight?
I think as we've somewhat discussed this with you before and looked at the recommendations from our planning commission, I felt real positive about those recommendations from the planning commission. We, as a city, we did have a commercial corridor coming up 5500 south, and we've hoped that there would be some type of commercial business come into the city. That's why we zoned it that way with our general plan. But along those lines, we also would like those businesses that move into Hooper based on what our residents would like, and that we support commercial business coming in, but we would like it to be based on what we've been told, or when we got the general plan before, explained to us what the type of commercial business that the residents would like. So along those lines, when the planning commission met, they actually set a recommendation to the council, and I'd like to discuss those recommendations, and I think Stuart, you've kind of addressed some of them, and but I'd like to go down through those recommendations and see maybe the council will have more discussion on that as well. I think it's been made pretty clear here tonight by a few residents that we really don't feel that Hooper City should be paying for a lift station. Developers that have come in before have done that as part of their development, and so I would not be in favor of any type of CRA or a community reinvestment area that would tax us. They sometimes refer to that as a TIF, like a tax increment financing. In my mind, it's like Hooper City, in a way, provides a no-interest loan. And so I would not be in favor of Hooper City providing funding for the lift station or the residents of Hooper City. Planning Commission also talked about the possibility of building the commercial portion of this project first, so that, and I don't know that the entire store would have to be built. We could set some parameters there. Maybe 60 to 70% of the commercial business is put in place before we start the residential buildings. I think that actually diminishes the risk to Hooper City, so that we're not on the hook for something that, when I say on the hook, we're not looking forward to something being built that for some reasons wouldn't end up happening. Another thing and you mentioned, the lot changes along the west side. Of course, we don't have a zone for quarter-acre lots anymore, and you agreed to move that to third-acre lots on the west side, and those would be individual homes, and then the half-acre lots on the north. Let's see, did I say that right? I think we talked about third-acre lots on the west side with half-acre lots on the north side. And then we have the remaining portion of that zone. And I believe our planning commission thought it would be good to have single residents there, single resident homes. We have provisions in our general plan for a patio zone, for discussed maybe having a 55 and older type facility there. But along with those, the patio zone also requires a 40% open space. And along with meeting all the ordinances that are currently in place for Hooper City for this type of development. Those were the recommendations that were given by our planning commission, and it gives us a chance to kind of review those. And I don't know if there's any questions that any of the council would have, but my question could, that's kind of the what we're looking for in this development that would come into Hooper. And I don't know if council has any questions for what I reviewed or.
Well, I think you did a great job. I think Stuart's asking for some direction, and I think that's what we're, going to do, is give you some direction and kind of lay our cards out, and then the decision will be yours, of course. But I think Dale explained it really well, some of the concerns and things that we want to have take place if this does pass.
What are your thoughts on that? As we've heard and discussed, and I think as we've talked amongst the council, we felt somewhat comfortable, I would think, with, like you mentioned, the third on the one side, the half on the other. Like we've mentioned, Hooper City is not financially in any position to really be paying for this sewer lift station. We certainly don't want that to be a financial burden to our residents, so maybe you could give us some insight. And I'll be the first to admit, as I mentioned in our work meeting, I've gone to a lot of meetings learning about these tax increment financing and CRA, and I can't say I'm 100% confident in my knowledge on any of these. So, and this is we're in unfamiliar territory. We've never done this before as a city.
So I appreciate that. And again, that's the half-acre lots and the third-acre lots were not a recommendation from the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission, as I remember the recommendation, was the entire project to be some type of planned unit development or retirement center or whatever else. But at least the motion was for the entire project to be patio homes or whatever the recommendation was. I think, Malcolm, is that correct?
I can't recall off the top of my head the specifics on that.
Okay, but we.
I believe that was what we discussed in our meeting.
I just wanted clarification on that. So if that was a recommendation from the Planning Commission, we're willing to modify that, as we mentioned, I think, in the work meeting, and go to I think you recognize that, to go to the third-acre lots on the west and half-acre lots on the north. That's how our original application was. It was actually a quarter-acre lots and half. I think we've mentioned many times, all the way since last fall, that we're willing to do the third-acre lots and the half-acre lots. So with regards to the financing, that's why I asked, I think anything you do ought to be a contingent rezone, because I think there's some, you've mentioned, Mayor, you're not sure about the financing. We would never ask for a tax increase to pay for improvements. If that's what's anticipated, that's probably not clear. We talked about that very clearly in the work meeting, and I think there were council members that indicated they misunderstood that. They thought it was a tax increase. There may be people in the public that were. We never asked for that. The CRA is not a tax increase. It's simply trying to reallocate some of the existing tax base to be able to pay for infrastructure. And that's what a CRA is. And so the reason that we've asked for a contingent rezone is to bring some of the experts into the council that can talk about some of the opportunities there are to be able to try to build a lift station or try to fund it. And that may take some time, and it may take some questions by the council that probably need to be answered, either in a work meeting or otherwise, to bring those experts in. And it's hard for anybody to make a decision if they don't have the information. And so you probably need to have those people come so they can tell you more information, and then you can make a decision. And if you agreed with their, and you saw a way forward, then you'd probably move ahead and put together the development agreement. If you did not, you probably wouldn't, and the rezone wouldn't happen. Does that make sense? So a lot of cities make those type of recommendations contingent on working out the details in the development agreement. And then I think there was one other question about trying to do the project, the commercial first and the residential. The rest of that in the work meeting, and very clearly that doesn't work. You heard from other developers, I think, clear back before the current mayor was mayor, they came in and there's just not enough volume to pay for a lift station without having more residential. So if you don't allow the residential to happen, you don't get the lift station, we can't pay for the lift station. And if you don't get the lift station, we can't do the commercial. So we need to do them together. I think the economics show that. I understand some hesitancy. There can be some assurances that they can be done together. But to try to bifurcate them, basically, I don't think the project would work. So that answers that question.
Yeah, and if I implied or some way, gave the thought out that if there was a tax increase, I didn't mean that. But what taxes we do collect, whether it be our utility tax or what sales tax would be generated from the commercial operation, could go back to pay for this lift station. It wouldn't necessarily increase our taxes, but what tax revenue we currently have would go back to build the lift station. And so if I didn't make that clear, and of course it would require other entities too, like the fire district or the school board, or it's not like it's increasing taxes, but taxes that we currently are paying would go to pay for this lift station.
And that, again, I think would be a misunderstanding, because you can't take the current tax base and use that to pay for a CRA. Current taxes cannot be used to pay for the CRA. So any taxes you're currently leveling cannot be used to pay for the CRA. The increment is the increase. And that's the definition of increment. So it would have to be only increased taxes that can pay for it. Or why would you do it? I mean, why would you take a current tax base? And maybe there's a misunderstanding there, and that's why I think we need to bring the experts in so that they can explain the process. And you can make a decision. You may not like it, even understanding it, but we probably need to bring them in so that they can explain the basis for that. So thank you.
I think we've had the experts come in. Stephanie Russell came in. We've had 2 or 3 different. So I think we understand the CRA well enough. And yeah, you're right. It's not current taxes. However, our utility tax that would also be levied on the Smiths, we would be forfeiting some of that, as well as property and sales tax. So yeah, we get that component. So
yeah, and so I just comment, but the Smiths never came, you wouldn't have that tax anyway. So it would only be if the Smiths came, that additional tax could be used. If they don't come, you don't have the tax.
Okay, is there any other questions that anyone has at this time?
I just wanted to make a statement on the LRB study. I think we sometimes overlook that study. We spent a lot of time on that. We waited for that. We tried to examine it the best we could, but correct me if I'm wrong, anybody, but I think at the end of the day of the study, we wanted to know how much taxes Hooper City was going to benefit from this entire project, right? So from what we could gather, we came up with $172,000 per year from sales tax, property tax, and utility tax for the future properties and buildings that would be built. $172,000 per year over the next 25 years, correct? I did some calculations because I like data too, and 172,000 divided by 3,000 roughly homes in Hooper is $57 per home per year. You know, property tax increase. Doesn't seem like much per home per year to offset this project we're talking about. So the economic, like we talked about in our pre-meeting, the economic benefits, Hooper City would benefit the least. Weber County would benefit, the state of Utah would benefit, Hooper City would benefit the least financially of those three entities. And so that's something as a council we haven't talked about was a property tax increase, because we haven't had a property tax ever since Hooper City's been in existence. We have one that was put in back when we were in the county, but we've never increased property taxes in Hooper City. So that was just a conversation we had, some data that we threw out there. 172,000 a year divided by 3,000 homes is $57 per year. And so that LRB study really kind of opened my eyes a little bit. I don't know about anybody else, but I thought it would be a lot more, substantially more. And for Mayor Dandoy to come and present that data, that was, welcome. I mean, I'm glad he came. That was great to hear. But he left out one component. He briefly said something, but he left out internet sales. That's the #1 tax generating thing, I bet, in his city, because it's #1 in our city. Granted, we don't have a grocery store, but we collect $1.3 million a year in Hooper City on internet sales. And so that's the cash cow in Hooper City. And I bet it is in Roy as well. So
Just kind of a little bit of thoughts on that with the LRB study, because I actually talked to Jason Birmingham at a separate meeting, and he said, one thing, and he did say this, but I'm not sure if he stressed this quite enough, it was worst case scenario. So the very worst case scenario is if the lift station ends up costing $3+ million, and we only do the very least, every expense, it would be, and you're right, Ryan, with the number that he mentioned. Best case scenario, though, shows a lot of different story than that. And before we ever started this, I was given some advice that I should call around to some of the other Smiths and other cities and ask them what they were getting. And this one's not a Smiths, but just a little bit to compare. So Plain City was in a similar position that we were in. They really, when we talk about this, back in the day, we used to have a grocery store. In fact, we used to actually have 2 in Hooper. And now we don't have any, but Smith said that their mayor that's currently serving said when he was elected mayor, they had already approved to do the Kents, and they were getting about $200,000 a year in sales tax. And then he said now we get about $1.4 million from their Kents and their surrounding businesses. When I spoke with Kaysville, who has a Smith's Marketplace, which would be comparable probably in size to ours, maybe a little bit larger, and they end up getting about $1.8 million. So when I called West Point, and they didn't give me the exact amount, but they said it had significantly increased their sales tax. North Ogden has one. They said it has brought in a significant increase. They didn't know what they would do if they didn't have a Smith's. Heber City, that only had a Smith's, but now it's a Smith's Marketplace, said that it had brought in $200,000 more when it was a marketplace and it was Smith's. So I know when you look at this, and I hear the comments, and it is right. So we have to start somewhere. We are not next year going to be getting this revenue from Smith's. We're probably not even within 2 years going to be getting this revenue from Smith's. But every year we put this out, the longer it's going to take. And we have not had anybody else that has came. If another smaller grocery store would have came, or a mom and pop grocery store would have came, why aren't they here? And they're not. We haven't had anybody else that has wanted to, with as high of quality of a store as a Smith's Marketplace. Change isn't easy. I've lived in Hooper almost 70 years, and change isn't easy. but we have to sustain our city some way. We really do. We have to somehow be able to get some income coming into our city. And you're right, Councilmember Hill, we can raise property tax. We can. But how much property tax are we going to have to raise it in order to possibly make up $1.5 million? We're not just talking like you mentioned. And all these are things that we really do need to consider. And we're new at this. It's been years since we've had a grocery store in Hooper, and none of us sitting up here were ones that were affiliated with getting that started. So these are important decisions, and you know, I want to comment, and as has already been said, our Planning Commission unanimously recommended to City Council to approve this rezone. And as we talked about in our work meeting, there are some, you know, we can't necessarily even approve the rezone tonight, but what we can do is we need to actually have some kind of guidelines we can be telling Smith so they know even where to go from here. You know, before our staff ends up spending a lot of time working on things, before they spend a lot of time, and I think that's what we talked about in our work meeting, is that we need to be able to come up with some kind of recommendations that we can give them as far as what we would like to see with this.
I would just like to add that this falls within my district, which impacts Hooper and my district greatly. If it was just a grocery store, you know, but it's what comes along with it, and it's all the additional housing, which I've had a lot of comment from individuals about that being a great issue. This part of Hooper, where it's located, is pretty much rural still, with very small subdivisions on 30-acre lots. For me, I have to look at what's best for who I represent, and what's best for that area. I understand that we have the road, which is called SR 177 now, that will be eventually coming through. And I know that will change the scenery of our area. In fact, my home may be gone. I don't know. But the fact is that if it were just a grocery store, I would be looking at this entirely different than with all of the housing. And that's something that I have to take into consideration when I make this decision. So, and none of us are making decisions lightheartedly. This has been on our minds and everything a lot. And, you know, if we can work something out about different types of housing and things, then that's something maybe we can look at. But you know, it's just weighs heavy on my mind. And I just wanted to let everybody know that we're really conscious about what's going in Hooper. Thank you.
Well, is there any other discussion amongst the council? Like we talked about in work meeting, then what we would be doing is probably making some kind of motion. Reed, you correct me on what it is we need to do tonight.
Well, I think both the city and the developer are entitled to have some guidance here. And I think a motion, if you are in favor of moving forward with the development, the understanding that there has to be a whole lot of discussion that takes place on financing and possibly on the size of the houses, PUD versus patio houses. Some of that's still up in the air a bit. But conceptually, that you're in favor of the project, if you are, then I think that allows the city and the developer to move forward, start to develop an agreement. We have some changes that need to be made, in my opinion, in the general plan and the code. Those are easy to make. You can make them very quickly in one meeting, but they need to be drafted and put together so that you're able to do that. And if you give us the guidance to go ahead and do it, then that's what we'll do. So that would be my thought. If you are wanting to move forward with
questions on that then. So is there someone from the council that would like to make a motion reflecting what Reed said?
Okay, I'll do my best here. Because as I mentioned, I think from the general plan, we welcome business to come into Hooper, but it had to be according to what we wanted, what our residents wanted. So I'll try to work through a motion here with some notes and then ask council members to make it better or take, add to or take away as needed. But my first thought is there would be no CRA, community reinvestment area, or any other type of taxing increment financing, any other type of TIF. I don't know how to explain that. Hope that's clear, but that would not be part of this project in building the lift station. Most of the commercial portion of the project would be completed. There could be some percentages placed there. I'm not sure just how we would do that, but the commercial part of this, again, to diminish the risk to the city, that's what we're looking for, is a business, not to just build more homes. So we ought to focus on building the commercial part of this project first, before the homes. As we mentioned, the third-acre lots, well, we've already talked about that. Part of the motion would be that there would be third-acre lots on the west side, half-acre lots on the north side, leaving the remaining portion to be decided on. And the Planning Commission, they recommended that there be a patio zone placed there, which would require 40% of that zoning to be an open space. It could be a 55 or older type residence, but we'd have to decide on that. But at least there would be single residences. There would be single patio type homes. And then part of the motion, I guess, too, is we need to fill out an application to do the rezones that we need to have in place before we can approve anything. But again, this would be a motion to approve in concept, a conceptual, as you mentioned, a store with those provisions in place.
Okay, we've had a motion made by Council Member Fowers. Is there a second?
Let me just add one piece to that, because I know Stuart was concerned about that, the build-out, the commercial build-out before the residential. In the study with LRB, they gave a pretty good time frame of the build-out that I think we would be comfortable with. That a lot of the commercial was built prior to the residential. I think if they followed that build-out, it was, because I imagine LRB got this information from your group on the build-out. So I would reference on that number 2 that they follow the build-out that's illustrated in the fiscal impact study by LRB. That's a long motion, I know, but anyway, that's it's her condition, yeah.
Yeah, I think, so we'll go on. I think that, like you mentioned, this motion is made with a lot of conditions. We have a lot of work to do in the, don't you believe, in the interim? So it's not like, this is just a blanket approval of whatever, but it is with conditions of working with city council, a developer's agreement, making sure that everything is done at the liking of what city council feels. And I don't know, Morgan, did you get that down okay?
A little bit, yes, but I'll listen back to it a few times.
Okay.
I got it.
I maybe should have said like number 1, no, right, no tax increment financing.
Well, you could probably just put like build out, follow LRB's recommendations. That would
Yeah.
Sure, something like that.
So what I have, if you want, so I have no CRA, confirmed, yes. Commercial portion to be done first, reference to the 1/3 acre lots on the west side, 1/2 acre lots on the north. Other areas would be up for discussion. Rezone application to be done.
Okay, my recommendation, you know, as part of the motion would be that this become a patio zone. You know, so it is single housing residential lots. An idea there would be a 55 or older community, or not necessarily, moderate income, whatever, affordable housing. I don't know exactly how we control that, but I'm not making this very easy for you, Morgan.
That's okay.
But most importantly, that it is single residence. It's not under the ordinances that we have for a patio zone.
Okay. And then a developer agreement in place. Did I miss anything?
A developer's agreement? Yeah. Yeah, that would be a continuous, right.
Okay. Got it.
Okay, so we have that motion made by Councilmember Flowers. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
There is a second made by Councilmember Wilcox. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, no discussion then. Have a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, any opposed?
Nay.
Okay, so are we can have another motion made then? Is there someone else that wants to make a different motion concerning this then? His motion was pretty much just to be able to give them some guidelines and so we could start working with them.
And I guess I don't know if I need to make a motion or just a recommendation. I mean, I think I like to do things in order. You know, I think way before we even get to this, I mean, we were coming today to make a rezone request. I mean, number one, we can't do the rezone request without having the general plan opened and closed and our general land use map corrected to allow a rezone to happen. So this request shouldn't have even come to Hooper City tonight and then been on our agenda because it says rezone request. I mean, I know we've tailored that, we've tried to fix that a little bit, but this discussion about no CRA and the type of housing and all these other different things should have happened long before we come to this meeting for approval or disapproval. And so my recommendation would be to have another work meeting to iron out the details if we're in approval, if we're in agreement as a council, and taking the planning commission's recommendations and coming to an agreement, are we going to move forward or not, long before we tiptoe around a rezone request. That's not going to happen, if that makes any sense. Hopefully it does, because I'm just hesitant to approve something that's on an agenda that's really not on an agenda, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I guess my purpose of the motion was to give some direction as to what our planning commission had recommended to us as a council, and then if we as a council felt that was a good plan. And so I really pretty much just outlined what had been recommended to us from the planning commission. And as we talked earlier, recognizing that we do have to have this other step in there. As far as the rezoning things for this commercial business.
I appreciate the motion. I think we've made some clarity with the group. And I think I'd like to know, maybe in a work meeting, how they feel about all of that, all those conditions. Are they okay with not having a CRA? Are they, okay with the patio homes? Because we can't move forward as a group, both sides, until we know everybody's 100% on board.
Sure, and I think that's exactly the point. Then now we kind of put the ball back in their court to say, okay, are we willing to follow the recommendations that Hooper City Planning Commission and Council has given us? Is this something we want to pursue or not? Rather than, it gives them some direction so you can decide whether they want to move something forward or not.
And so I don't think it was even a motion to approve or disapprove
No.
at this point. It was just direction. It was
Just
instructions. It was guidance. It was, are we on the same page? I don't think a motion needs to be voted on or approved or disapproved tonight. So.
Well, as you're all aware, we did have that meeting, that work meeting on May 27th, when that was our chance, because, you know, before we had them come, we had that meeting that we were supposed to give them some direction, so hopefully when they came. So if I'm understanding you right, Councilmember Hill, it's not that you're saying you don't necessarily agree for them to start moving forward. You're saying, how do we make a motion? Because what this states as a motion on our agenda is not what we're saying. I guess what we're looking for tonight is we need some kind of, they want some kind of direction if they're going to move forward. And yes, you're welcome to come back up.
And I kind of like the idea of the process. If you're going to open the general plan, then you probably ought to do that, okay? And that could be done. And we, are willing to, I mentioned before that there's a lot of things that we need to discuss. And we want to make sure you're comfortable with those. And if work meetings needed, we'd be happy to come to another work meeting and continue to talk about those. Especially, we're talking about a housing product. And there are little vagueness as to what you're, whether it's, we've seen some really great senior housing, but some of those are twin homes, some of them are separate homes. So I don't know, it'd be nice to be able to bring some product in and actually see what you think or have those discussions. So if we're open to that, again, trying to let you make the best decision. Our thought was whatever we did, it would be subject to a development agreement that could address those type of things. And so I think we're in agreement with that. It's just a process of how you want to move forward. I wanted you to know that, so thank you.
One question, Stuart, while you're up there.
Yeah.
Are there any of those items that Dell lined out that you would have an issue with?
Yeah, I think, again, I'd like to make sure, just one more time, of both the items, both the CRA, and make sure there's a clear understanding. Yeah, it probably is, but I'd like to have an opportunity to at least talk to you about it one more time. And I would also like to make sure that we have the process of being able to fund a lift station and to see how that revenue comes in with residential and commercial combined. And if it's in the LRB study, then we probably, I'm not unfamiliar with, I can't remember what they said. So to say, yeah, I agree to it right now, I'd like time to look at it and see if those numbers are actual or whether they're conceptual. And just to have that time to look at it. But I mentioned before that it's going to take everything that we can do to build that lift station economically, and we plan to do that because the project doesn't work without it. But we'd like to know what we can do to help do that. So that's part of the process. So, yeah, the two are making it very difficult on us, but we will do everything we can to try to make it work. Okay. Other questions I can see now.
Well, in all honesty, I haven't been able to be to a lot of those prior meetings because of work situations, and so this might sound really naive, really stupid, and that's okay if it does. You can tell me. But in my head, when I first heard, about the discussion about a grocery store and different things like that, my thought was, why does it have to be go big or go home? Why can't it just be a smaller market, no gas pumps, yes, the residential and different things like that around it, but in our area, do we need that monstrosity of a marketplace, or can it be something, like not as large? I don't know, like that one up in Heber doesn't seem like it's as large, but I'm just kind of curious. I just don't know.
And you're asking probably the wrong person, and we're here as a developer.
Right.
We have a user that's come to us, and I'm a little tentative even though the word's gone out and their name's gone out, so I don't want to speak for them.
Right.
But they're interested in this area. If another product was interested, perhaps it'd be a different product.
Okay.
It's the product that they have, and it is the same as the one in Heber, same size.
Yeah.
No change there, but I'd rather them speak for themselves. I'm a little tentative even to speak for them. They have an interest, and so we've shown up. If somebody else had an interest, perhaps they'd show up.
Okay.
And it's who's been here, so it's not that we've gone out and tried to manufacture something.
No, that was just a question I had, so thank you for clearing that up.
It's the market that I guess is driving it.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so I guess again, back a question to you, Reed, then what is it then? Because I know they want to have something so they know what they're moving forward on. City staff would also like to have something, so, and even as we meet again, so what would you like, what should we be then coming up with
Well, it
tonight?
sounds to me like the council is in favor of the concept. So we can start on what changes need to be made, but you certainly got some details that need to be worked out, and that probably is the work. I think there's no question that there's got to be a way devised to fund a lift station. You're not going to have anything happen without a lift station, and that's expensive, so how are you going to fund it? There was a question about the small market. Well, the small market's not going to be able to afford to put in a lift station. So somehow in this discussion, you've got to find a way to fund that lift station, and that may be something we need to spend some more time on.
The one thing I was going to mention is the only thing we have, the only thing we have on our agenda is the rezone request. So we're kind of limited to what we can do tonight as far as I'm aware of, as far as agenda items go. It has to be on the agenda for us to do it. So that was all that we had tonight, was a discussion motion on the rezone request.
I think we understand where we're headed.
So what you're saying then, we don't necessarily need to have a motion, we do need to have a motion to give them just some direction that we are all in favor. I guess I'm still.
I think there's no action at this point. It sounds to me like
Okay.
you're going to have a hard time delineating the specifics in a motion that everybody's going to agree on.
Sure.
So let's just defer everything until you can come up with something that can reasonably put into a motion.
So everybody, so maybe it's like I mentioned before about when the person came and wanted to buy that piece of ground, then council still is saying though they are comfortable with a project, we just don't have all the specifics yet of what everybody is comfortable with.
Well, that's what it sounds to me like. I don't know.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like to me too. And I guess making the motion and getting the results we did, I think helped give a better understanding as to the direction we need to head.
Okay, so what we will do with this then is we will plan another work meeting, and then maybe then from what everyone I feel like is saying, that they are comfortable with this project. We just have a lot of specifics that we still need to work out as far as with this project. And a lot of those specifics probably go along with the developer's agreement when we're doing that, as far as what Hooper wants to see and what you want to see. Does that give you enough? Do you feel like?
We'll keep going.
Okay. Any other questions then anybody from council has for them? Okay, thank you. We will get with you then and get another meeting scheduled when we can, go through then more of the specifics of, and I think they gave you enough as far as, probably the housing sizes, some of those things that could give you what we could want to move forward with. Okay, thank you. Okay, the next thing we have on our agenda then is a discussion and a motion, approval of a purchase of an emergency preparedness trailer. So I'm going to turn some time over to Councilmember Wilcox to explain that to us.
Sounds good. So in the work meeting, we discussed this pretty good, but we have purchased a trailer for our emergency preparedness cash box, which Weber County highly recommends that each city in the county have essential emergency supplies on hand in case, you know, they can't get here to help us. So Dave Harris went out and he found a trailer that suits our needs. It's red, it's big, it's got a lot of amenities to it as far as power and hookups for generators. And so he went ahead, I told him, I says, we need to, you know, approve the funding, but he didn't want the trailer to be sold. So he went and bought it with his own money and is just seeking, he has not titled it, so it'll be titled in the city. So he paid $12,500 for it. He's got about $100 to pick it up and another $25 for insuring it. So $12,625. And these funds would be coming when we initiated the utility energy tax. As a council, we set aside 5% of that for emergency preparedness. So that's where this money would be coming from. So we need to vote to buy that trailer from Dave Harris, so he doesn't resell it, because I think it would be a great asset for the city. So we're going to have it at Tomato Days. Hopefully it'll be all stocked up. I don't know yet, but we'll definitely parade it around. And what's that again? Sure. Yeah. So do we need a motion on this? Or what
Yes, we do. We need a motion. There is money, as you mentioned, in the budget, but when I spoke with our financial treasurer, because this wasn't a line item that we did have in the budget, then we need to have that motion approved. And I agree. I think this would be a great addition to have with Hooper City. And we have discussed this in work meetings, so we need to have a motion of the approval of the purchase of this trailer.
I'll make the motion that we approve the purchase of the emergency preparedness trailer with the payback of to Mr. Harris and moving forward.
I'll second it.
Do we need to have the amount? No. Do we need to have the amount? Or no?
I don't think we necessarily do, because it was budget money. Okay, so we have a motion that was made by Councilmember Northrup. A second was made by Councilmember Maragoni. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that carries. The next thing then, we need to have a motion. This will be a roll call vote. We talked about this before, which is ordinance number 2025-02. And what this ordinance was is amending the existing subdivision fencing ordinance. Currently, our ordinance says that part of our ordinance, it's a land separation fence, and that ordinance stated that it would need to be approved by city council. Those subdivisions no longer come to city council, and so all this is just the verbiage change from city council as it is approved through the planning commission. So again, we have that ordinance. We just need someone to make the motion to approve that ordinance.
I'll make the motion to approve ordinance 2025-02, amending the existing subdivision fencing ordinance.
That motion was made by Councilmember Hill. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second made by Councilmember Fowers. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor? Oh, this has to be a roll call vote. Okay, we'll start with you, Councilmember Wilcox.
Aye.
Councilmember Hill.
Aye.
Councilmember Northrup.
Aye.
Councilmember Maragoni. Aye. Councilmember Fowers.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Okay, our next one then is a motion roll call vote. It's resolution number 2025-01, a resolution approving an interlocal agreement for the provision of technical forensic services. We are one of the contract cities with the Weaver County Sheriff's Department. Part of that contract includes this, but with that they have to have a resolution that we are doing an agreement with them. It's not an increase in our contract price. It is included in the contract price, but it is something we have to have an agreement, an interlocal agreement. So if someone would want to make that motion.
I'll make the motion that we go ahead with the resolution approving an interlocal agreement for the provision of technical forensic services, resolution number 2025-01.
The motion was made by Councilmember Northrup. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second made by Councilmember Maragoni. This also, any discussion on that motion before we call for the roll call vote? Okay, this time we'll start at the other end. Councilmember Flowers?
Aye.
Councilmember Maragoni?
Aye.
Councilmember Northrup?
Aye.
Councilmember Hill?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilcox?
Aye.
Okay, thank you, motion carries. Okay, the last thing on our agenda then is a discussion. Back in February, there was a motion that was tabled, the shifting of the mayoral powers. And so we said at that time that we would revisit this in 3 months. And so our 3 months are here, and so we need to have a discussion on what we have done or are doing or any plans with that.
I'll go ahead and start that discussion. So, Councilmember Hill motioned to have a closed-door meeting, and that has not taken place yet. We've had a couple opportunities presented for us to have them. One of them was canceled because of the format that was displayed to us. So, what we need to decide now, we still need to have that discussion amongst ourselves to resolve these issues that we have. So we need to decide as a council sometime next week to actually do that. I've spoken with, most of you, so I don't know if it's Tuesday night, Monday, Tuesday night. I know Wednesday's not good. So to fulfill the motion by Ryan Hill, we need to, in fact, do that. So we need to pick a day. So does Tuesday work?
So that was one thing too, because you mentioned about the format, because, as that motion was made by Councilmember Hill, and one thing was motioned about myself and Councilmember Flowers, who's actually my brother, actually meeting and trying to do things, and we did have a closed-door meeting. It was recommended by our legal counsel to have a mediator there. They gave us some names, and one was selected that was a retired judge, and that never occurred. We did then have 2 meetings that were scheduled, that I had scheduled for closed-door meetings, and those ended up being canceled as well. So I guess my question is what format, because like I said, was recommended, we do have...
Well, in the motion, Ryan, because I went back and listened to it a couple times, he did talk about mediation prior, but within the motion, there was never mediation, and the format that was presented to us was not going to work. So I was told we would be in one room, the mayor would be in another, and the mediator would go back and forth. And we were not okay with that because that was not part of the agreement. So Ryan and I have spoken. I think the 6 of us need to get together. If we need the attorney there, that's great, but we don't need a mediator. I think we can handle this through ourselves. And just to give some clarity on what we're talking about here, what we're going to discuss. I mean, can't get into details, but there are some significant budgetary and employee management issues that need to be brought up. There's some ordinance violations that are well documented that need to be brought up, and also some litigation that the city is paying for that the mayor's involved with. So those are the items that we need to talk about and iron them out, and I hope we can. But I think the 6 of us, without a mediator, can handle that. If our attorney's present, great, but we need to do that, I think, before we move on. Because that was Ryan's motion. I did not vote for the motion. I was the only one that declined, but out of respect for the council, we need to go through with that, fulfill it. Because there's definitely some choppy waters that we need to figure some things out. We just do. We owe it to ourselves and our residents to do that. So I'm proposing Tuesday night. I don't know what the rest of you can do, and I don't know what time.
So I wasn't aware when you said that about the mediator. That was not my understanding that I received from the mediator. From what I understood, and also from, as I mentioned again, the recommendation from our legal counsels, it's always good to have a mediator there, because if not, it's just 6 people giving opinions that there really isn't anybody that is biased or an outsider maybe that can listen and give some recommendations. So I'm not familiar with that, going from room to room, with me in one room and you in another room. That was I'm not sure where that came from, because that was
That's what I was
never,
told. So,
yeah, I don't know where that came
Brian
from.
was too, so.
Yeah, I'm not sure who that came from, because that was never ever what I was told from the retired judge or anything that our attorneys had mentioned. That was never ever what it was. So I think in order to accomplish, and you know, when we talk about this, I feel like there's a lot of things that, you know, you're right, things that always need to be worked on, and I think that is, and I think there's some things we're trying to do with that, and I from the beginning was familiar, or was comfortable with having a closed door meeting, and like I mentioned, you know, we had scheduled that, and everyone knew and had been told, and then it wasn't until like the day before that those ended up being canceled. So, but it's a Tuesday, but again, so you're saying you do not want to have a mediator there at all? Anybody there that's a neutral person?
Or would he like to?
He'd want to come.
Would you? Not like to, would you?
Sounds like something the council will work out. I don't know that I can do that. Fair enough.
I know when we talked about this before, and Brandon had, our other legal counsel at the time, had given 3 names of retired judges that he said he thought would be good. And sometimes, anytime when you're working out things, it's nice to have somebody else there that can maybe listen and say, okay, I think this sounds, yes, maybe this. That was the basis, I think, of that recommendation of having someone else there that can actually give some opinions on some things. So that's why we went that direction to begin with, was with that.
It's my motion, and it just doesn't go away because we tabled it. Tabling a motion just doesn't make it disappear, and you never talk about it again. So we said we would discuss it again in 90 days, and today is 90 days. And that was one of the stipulations I wanted to take place, was for us to meet in a format where we could work out our differences. You know, there's no sense moving forward as a council and a mayor if we have, not disagreements, but differences to the point where we can't get anything done. You know, it's just silly to work in that kind of a manner. So that was one of my tools, if you will, to alleviate shifting of mayoral powers, you know. And so I still recommend that. You know, Bryce obviously brought up the discussion just today. If we can meet as the 6 of us and have a civil conversation, I say we do it. You know, if we need a mediator because we can't have a civil conversation, then let's get a mediator. So I have confidence in all of us that we can do it amongst the 6 of us. You know, so there's just some simple questions and answers. You know, we have a question about this. What's the answer? What's the solution? When we walk out that door, we need to put it all behind us and move on. You know, and again, we're going to have to revisit this motion. You know, to either approve it or deny it. We can't. It just doesn't go away. And so that was my intent, was to create a avenue to solve the issues before we got to this motion. So Tuesday night works for me.
There you go. And as to my invitation, I think you're better off with just the group of them. But if you really get to the point that you need to be there, I'm happy to come, but I don't know that I can add the group that you need to work it out, I think. But I don't want to say I won't come. I'd rather not.
Okay, so everyone's agreeable to that then? This coming up this Tuesday, which is June 10th, and did you say 7:15? And it will be a closed door meeting. With that, we have to okay, let's see. We have to make sure we can get that noticed. So you can notice that Monday. And so what we will do with that meeting is we come here first. It has to be an open meeting first, and then there has to be a motion to move that to a closed door meeting. And then we will go into a closed door meeting, and then at that time, when we're done with the closed door meeting, recognizing that everything said in a closed door meeting cannot be discussed anywhere but in that closed door meeting. So nothing can be said anywhere else to any person. And then after that, we close that meeting and come back to an open meeting and then close that meeting.
Right, and you can't make decisions in that meeting that are final decisions, those have to be made in the open meeting. So you can talk about things, you can discuss whatever you want, but a decision has to be made. If you're going to make a decision of some kind, it has to be done in an open meeting.
Okay.
And you do need to record the meeting.
Yes. So that, are you okay, Morgan? Are you to come that night, Tuesday at 7:15? Okay. Okay. We will plan on doing that then. Okay, that was the last thing then on our agenda, so we need a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Okay, that motion was made by Councilmember Maragoni. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, second made by Councilmember Wilcox. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Meeting's adjourned.